let's take a look at how Halloween is celebrated in many cultures around the world. Halloween originated 3,000 years ago from a Celtic holiday called Samhain, which means summer's end. So each year there's a fire festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, and they have bonfires, they do fortune telling, they wear costumes as animals or beasts to kind of scare off the ghosts. Now, in the year 609, Pope Boniface IV declared a celebration called All Saints' Day. It's also called All Hallows in Middle English, known as Hallows Eve. And so that's when they honor all the martyrs and saints in history who have died. Now in the Philippines, All Saints' Day is known as Dia de Todos los Santos, or Undas, which comes from the Spanish word honras, which means you honor, as in you honor your dead family members today, right now. Basically, everyone goes to the cemetery and they set up a tent on their loved one's grave. They bring food, they play music, they basically have a party, and a lot of them will bring blankets and they sleep overnight in the cemetery to remember their loved ones. So now in Mexico, completely unrelated to Halloween, is the Day of the Dead, the Dia de los Muertos. And according to tradition, the gates of heaven are opened at midnight on October 31st, and the spirits of children can rejoin their families for 24 hours. Then the spirits of adults do that same thing on November 2nd. And it's believed that the border between the spirit world and the real world dissolve. So the souls of the dead awaken, they return to the living world to feast, drink, dance, and play music with their loved ones. And in turn, the family members treat the deceased as honored guests in their celebrations. And they also leave the deceased's favorite foods and other offerings at grave sites. And they call them ofrendas, or altars, and they build them in their homes. Now, ofrendas are decorated with candles, marigolds, red cockcombs, food. You have like stacks of tortillas and fruit. Now, the Igbo people in Nigeria believe that every 2 years, a massive return of the Odo, or the dead, occurs where the dearly departed spend up to 6 months communing with the living. And then they welcome them back with festivities. They send them off with this theatrical Odo masquerade, and then they reenact the profound grief when the dead depart back to their land. Okay, now for Chinese people, your ancestors don't just return for a visit, they want gifts. So to appease them, you can burn fake money, you can give them food, cell phones, cars, houses, not just for tax write-off. And it's also called Yulan, or month-long Buddhist festival, where they hold Chinese operas outside so they can light dragons on fire. And then they leave the front row empty. It's like the VIP section for the dead people. It's called the Hungry Ghost Festival. Then they have these floating water lanterns. So this, if you're Chinese, is a really good time to talk to your dead relatives, because they come back specifically to make amends for offenses committed against them. So for example, if your brother and sister stole your inheritance, you can ask your dead parents to play scary tricks on them, to let them know that mommy and daddy are watching them from heaven, and they're going to come back every year to haunt them until they do the right thing. So Halloween can be good for some people and a day of reckoning for others. So it kind of depends which side you fall on. Now in Japan, it's kind of a good thing. They have the Daimonji festival in Kyoto. They welcome the dead with food and dancing, and then they light 5 bonfires on the surrounding mountains with the character for big, which is pronounced dai, and it also means great, like as a farewell to the spirits returning back to the afterlife. Now in Denmark, they celebrate Festival, where children dress up in costumes and they go house to house collecting candy and these cream-filled buns called festelonballer. And they take turns whacking a barrel filled with candy, and the barrels always have images of black cats on them because historically the Danes believed that black cats would ward off evil spirits. Now in Germany, they celebrate Walpurgisnacht, which is Witches' Night, and they think that witches fly on broomsticks from Hale to Brocken Mountain, where they worship the devil around a raging bonfire. And in Romania, on the day of Count Dracula, who was a famous vampire, people go to Transylvania's Bran Castle, and they kind of go through these hidden tunnels. They wander through secret staircases. Now in Cambodia, which is Buddhist, and India, which is Hindu, they have a lot of similarities to Christianity. Halloween is about paying for the sins of the father. So in Cambodia, they celebrate Shum Ben, and it's a time to pay homage to ancestors from 7 generations. And they believe that the gates of hell are open on this day, and it's necessary to ward off evil spirits by offering them food and a merit transfer ceremony. Okay, so in Buddhist culture, you can do a bunch of good deeds, and then you accrue all these good karma points. And then you can spend your good karma points to pay for the bad deeds of one of your relatives or a friend so that they suffer less, either in this life or in their next life. So in India, they go back 3 generations, and it's a festival called Pitra Paksha, and it's to honor the god of the dead, who's named Yama. And Yama takes souls hostage and holds them in purgatory or hell, and they meet 3 generations of their deceased relatives. And the soul is allowed to come to earth and unite with family members. And so the living people, they do a fire ritual known as Shraddha with very strict religious guidelines. And then they also recite holy scriptures from the Bhagavad Gita. So those are traditions from around the world.